Hi, welcome back to Power of Storytime. I'm Kate, the creative director of Calling Card Books and Z Girls Press, and today we will be finishing The Passage at Moose Beach. But before that, I guess I should say, Power of Storytime, we read from a kids or YA book every Wednesday at noon Pacific time. We've been reading The Passage at Moose Beach. If you missed any of the earlier videos, they're all on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, or Michael's website, which is michaelscabinbooks.com, so you can check them out there. And every Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, we read from one of our fiction or nonfiction books for adults. So we'd love for you to join us, or for you to go back through and watch some of the old videos and catch up to where we are in The Passage at Moose Beach. And now, to that beautiful review. It's from Eduardo Ramirez on Amazon, and he said, "Strong attachment to the story. This book came just in the right moment. I'm not sure if I will be able to describe what I feel about it. So I decided to read half of a chapter every morning at dawn. At the time, I was taking care of my 3-week-old daughter. She was my first kid, so I was starting my dad journey. The author's deep description of the environment was simply reflecting the type of place I enjoy the most. Naturally, I was able to picture myself in this cabin with my family and my new daughter. I got so into the story that it came to a point where I was able to feel Richard's anguish. I'm trying not to spoil anything here. I feel a strong attachment with Alicia, the main character. I liked her spirit, leadership, and represented values. Alicia's values on the way she confronts problems are great examples of leadership and love. I really recommend this book for a child to read, as I think it has nice lessons to teach. As soon as I finished the book, this was my conclusion. This will be the very first book I will read to my daughter. To the author, thanks for this gift. I will never forget it." And that's beautiful. There's a couple of really lovely reviews for this book on Amazon. And if you've read the book or enjoyed the reading, please leave a review wherever you can. You can leave it on our website on the books page. You can leave it on Goodreads, or if you purchase through Amazon, you can leave a review there as well. It helps other people find out about the book, so we'd appreciate that. And also, if you want to, you can post your reviews on social media. Just make sure to either tag us at CCB Power of Story, or Michael on Instagram and Twitter is @cabinbooks. So tag us if you post about it anywhere. We'd love to see what you thought. We've also, as a special little thank you for reading along with us, we are offering the ebook version of The Passage at Moose Beach for free on our website and Michael's website. So if you go to michaelscabinbooks.com or callingcardbooks.com, you can get a free ebook copy. So it's 99 cents on Amazon if you want to get it there as well to read on your Kindle. And also, the first person to comment in the comments below will be sending them a hardcover copy of The Passage at Moose Beach. So if you want to get your hands on it and see all the beautiful illustrations in person, leave a comment and let us know what you thought about this. Hello!
Hi everybody, is this working?
Welcome. Yes, we can see you, we can hear you.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
Almost had a disaster while rebooting the computer.
Oh no, no.
And it went everywhere, so that was a panic moment, but fortunately none got on the actual computer, so we're good.
Wonderful. Well, we're so glad you made it. Technology is so fun sometimes, right?
Oh yeah, and the joys of the live presentation.
Yeah, so while you were getting ready, we read a beautiful Amazon review of your book about the father who's going to read it to his daughter as his first book for the daughter. So
yeah, I love that one.
So sweet, so sweet. Yeah, but would you like to read a little bit with us today?
Sure, I would be happy to. Are we ready to kick it off? I'm not sure what you discussed.
Yeah, we just introduced everything, but yeah, we're about ready to pick back up where we left off, which everyone had just watched poor Bristleback crumble to dust as he got them as close as he could to Gran'Tree. So now the gang is about to make their way to the final encounter with Gran'Tree and see if they can change his mind about the drying.
You know, that last section with Gran'Tree that you read, he has such a in terms of story time, he has such a small part, but for me, he was such an important character. And I knew early on in the writing that he wasn't going to make it. And as I was writing to that point, I always felt this this sense of stress leading to that, and it was really impactful for me, especially after I'd written it and I was reading it back. I found it very moving. It was tough for me to have him die like that.
Yeah, it makes it so impactful
necessary
though.
For the story.
Yeah, a lot of the kids, that was like their most heart-wrenching or favorite part was Bristleback's sacrifice for everybody, and that definitely made us cry in reading it. So it was very, very effective to lose him like we did.
All right, so with that, we'll pick up on chapter 14. A choice is made. Alicia stared at the pile of boulders where her friend sat. Alicia stared at the pile of boulders where once her friend sat, and felt anger building inside her. It was completely unfair to get so close, only to lose Bristleback now. How dare Gran'Tree be so selfish? Alicia wiped her tears away and looked to her friends, who came closer now to provide comfort in her moment of sorrow. Even though they had been terrified at the thought of meeting Bristleback, their fear was replaced with compassion and understanding for the massive being that had carried them to the end of their journey. He had a gentle way which they had never anticipated. They too felt the pain of his loss. Each of their lives would be forever changed from the short time spent with the troll. Fiona knelt gently once again so that Alicia could climb on her back. She grabbed the strap and balanced herself astride the deer, just as she had done before. Alicia could not resist one last look back at what remained of her friend, and a determination grew within her. With Mickey on her shoulder and Briar flying above, they moved forward to meet the great tree and demand that he answer for what he had done to their home. Entering into the shade of the large branches, Alicia felt the air temperature drop. Whereas the surrounding climate felt like a warm day in summer, underneath the giant branches, it was more like a cool spring morning. Alicia pulled the towel, dirty from travel, from Fiona's back and wrapped it tightly around her shoulders. Mickey pressed up against her neck, and her first companion in this land was now a small spot of warmth against the cold. As they approached the great tree, more details began to take shape. She could see that it was a giant yellow pine. Its bark was covered in what looked like enormous puzzle pieces, all stuck randomly together. The floor of the clearing was littered with large, heavy-looking pine cones, and she could see the ground bulging where the tree's massive roots extended outwards, pushing up the earth. These must be the source of the great tendrils of darkness she had seen earlier, increasing their reach out into the lands to absorb every last bit of water. Stopping several yards from the trunk of the enormous tree, Alicia climbed down from the back of the deer and looked at her companions. Bristleback's final words, came back to her. "I need to tell you something," Alicia said. These friends, her family in this realm, looked at her waiting. "I'm going to ask Gran'Tree to open the barrier and send me home. I don't know if he will, or even if he can, but I need to try and return to my own life. I will miss you all dearly. You mean more to me than you will ever know. But I miss my parents. I miss my friends. I miss my school. I miss the cabin and the lake. If this works, this may be my last chance to say goodbye." She paused to give Mickey the opportunity to climb onto her hand so that she could look at him, Fiona, and Briar. "Please take care of each other." She turned to Fiona, patting the deer's soft neck while she listened. "Good luck to you, young one," Fiona spoke in her usual silent way. "I am happy that I could bring you here. You taught me many things I will never forget, like hearing of the mechanical birds, seeing images you shared with me of your other home. Fiona sent one last image to Alicia. It was a large buck with many pronged antlers standing high on a snow-covered hill overlooking a valley. Your father? Alicia asked. I too know what it is to miss our parents, Fiona acknowledged. Now go back to yours, but never forget that you have friends here. Alicia was filled with a feeling of love and grace. She turned away from Fiona to find Briar looking at her. Thank you for sharing your songs with me. I will never sing them as well as you, but I will carry them with me always. You have a wonderful singing voice, Briar, Alicia said. Don't let anyone tell you different. Don't let that furball of a squirrel boss you around. You are handsome, proud, and brave. You saved my life, and I will always be thankful for that. I promise that if I make it home, I will always leave out extra peanuts for your brothers and sisters in the world. I will miss you, Alicia. You have helped me understand that there are more important things than just me in this world. Though my kind are used to fending for ourselves, I promise never to be selfish again. Alicia turned back to Mickey, who was now on Fiona's back, where he had climbed when Alicia petted the doe's warm neck. He was her first companion in this land, and her dearest friend in this place. It was my great honor to meet a human, Mickey said. I hope that all humans are as kind as you. It has been a real pleasure. He quickly turned away, but not before she saw a small tear slide down his fuzzy cheek. She leaned over to pick him up. Stop that now. You're going to make me cry too. She sniffled. I will never forget you, Mickey. I have learned so much from you. You have been one of my best friends in the whole world. Watch over these two when I'm gone. She stroked Fiona and looked up at the jay who had perched on a low branch. Don't let Briar steal all the food. And Fiona may be quiet, but she has a wonderful soul. Keep them close and be kind to each other. That is what we call love back home. It's the best thing you can do. I'm not a furball, by the way. No, Mickey, you're not. You're bigger than you know. Stay strong, my furry friend. She took her friend, and squatting, lowered Mickey back to the ground, gave him a final scratch on his head, and then she stood. One by one, she hugged the others as gently as she could, one final time. The lost traveler would have never made it this far without them, and she loved each one for the support they had given her. Now let's get this done. Alicia approached Gran'Tree on foot, stepping over and around the roots exploding out of the ground like giant sewer pipes, massive and swollen with the water they had channeled to the tree. In truth, it was a grand tree, towering over the clearing. This close, she could see ants and centipedes carving their separate paths through the large crevices in the bark. Looking up, her eyes searched as high as possible, until she could barely make out his face. From this distance, the eyes appeared to be giant cracks in the great puzzled bark, looking out and surveying all that he ruled. She yelled up to him, Hey! Hey, you! Gran'Tree! Hey! Her voice carried. It was soft yet forceful, but the great tree simply ignored her. Hey! Hello! I'm down here! She put more energy into her call, but again there was no response. It was as Mickey had told her so long ago. The tree either could not hear, or was simply choosing to ignore. Maybe to it, she sounded like an annoying yappy dog. Let me, try! Briar screeched. He launched himself skyward, dodging branches and flying up as hard as he could, while the rest of the group waited down below. Higher and higher he flew, his wings tired, but Briar was determined to get the old tree's attention. Briar continued to screech until finally coming level with the tremendous face of the yellow pine. God! 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 Go away, you annoying little gnat! Gran'Tree spoke in a voice that was deep and slow, carrying across this clearing in the valley beyond. His face crackled and crunched with the movement of his speech. His mouth was a huge gash across the trunk, as if some giant lumberjack long ago had swung his axe a few times and removed a chunk of the old tree. Some years passed, sap had dripped from the corners of the mouth and dried into two long and yellow and amber streaks, like frozen streams. His huge eyes were two knots, uneven in size and above the gash. They looked older than anything Briar could imagine. They were rimmed with greenish moss. You are disturbing me. Briar responded. He looked into the eyes of Gran'Tree, and Briar could see himself reflected in something shiny right in the middle of those big knots. He remembered Alicia's words. He was proud. He was brave. I will not! God, leave! Why do you insist on interrupting my rest? There is someone, God, below, that needs to speak with you. And why should I speak with anyone? It's a human God child. A human child? Gran'Tree turned his immense eyes downward and saw a small being waving frantically from below. Interesting. Very well. I will listen. Alicia stood in awe of the giant tree, feeling the vibrations from the tremendous voice course through her very bones. With its attention focused on her, she found herself completely tongue-tied, her former confidence draining away. What could she possibly say to this thing that would make it listen? She was small, insignificant, and nothing compared to the grandeur of this being. She glanced back at her friends, both trembling in fear at being this close to the massive yellow pine, but wanting to stay near to their human friend and provide support. Hello, Mr. Gran'Tree? My name is Alicia, she spoke timidly. Speak louder. I can barely hear you. The tree spoke, undisguised boredom in his voice. Turning her head upward and cupping her small hands around the sides of her mouth like a megaphone, she used her voice as loud as she ever had in her life, even louder than when she'd called her dad to dinner, standing on the dock while he was in the middle of the lake fishing in his rowboat. Believe in yourself, Alicia, Bristleback had said. You will find a way. She repeated the words. My name is Alicia, and I've traveled a long, long way to talk to you. Why are you taking all the water? Why shouldn't I take all the water? Water is power, and I am the most powerful of all. Alicia felt her blood getting hot as the anger grew inside of her. Can't you see what you are doing to the land? We're literally killing all the plants and creatures who live there. You killed my friend. Bristleback was the very last of the mountain trolls. You drove away or killed the rest of his family with your water stealing, and now you have killed him as well. She shouted at the tree even louder, with fury in her voice. Was that the giant who entered my valley? I saw him fall. The lack of concern was apparent in the tree's voice, as if he was speaking of watching a flower wilt. Yes, she screamed, and her face as red as her aching throat felt. And it's all your fault. His name was Bristleback, and you killed him. You killed him, and you were killing the land, and soon all of us. We will all be dead and gone, and you'll be alone. Who will you rule over then, huh? Who? It matters not. I was here at the beginning. I will be here at the end. What gives you the right to decide that? The young girl asked incredulously, anger burning through her. The trees are the most ancient of beings. I am the grandest of them all. Gran'Tree proclaimed. His huge branches creaked as they stretched outward, raining down loose pine needles on Alicia and her friends. That gives me all the right I need to do what I want. Alicia was reminded of the bully in her school at home, the biggest kid in her grade, and because of this, he felt everyone should bow before him, like he was king or something. It was terrible, and it made her furious to see. But the tree was majestic, all right, but he was no king. He would rule with a kind hand. You're nothing but a bully, she screamed at him. And you have no respect for anyone but yourself. You can just take because you deserve it? You deserve nothing. Suddenly, one of the great roots thrashed up underneath the feet of Alicia and flung her several feet into the air. She landed with little grace on her rear end, setting off a fresh round of tears at the sudden pain and humiliation. How dare you speak to me about taking anything? Gran'Tree said, menacingly. For years, your kind took what was not theirs. Gran'Tree's voice grew louder with fury, sending her friends scurrying back several feet. We banished you. Now the ancient ones are weak, and I have the strength. But you do not belong in this world anymore, human child. The massive roots continued to quiver around the girl, as if daring her to rise. I know that, Alicia moaned, voice weak and rough from screaming. Why don't you go home? Your kind is not welcome here. I can't, she cried. There's no way back. I looked. The world disappeared as soon as I stepped into the wild side. My parents are gone. Pop is gone. I'm alone. His fury now spent, the great tree's roots stopped their undulating movements. There is no sorrow in being alone. I have been alone for so long. The slightest note of compassion entered his voice. But if you want, I can send you back. Alicia froze at those words. Did she hear correctly? Did Gran'Tree just say he could send her back? She hadn't dared to ask yet, fearing the answer. But now a flame she was cautious to give life to began to bloom inside of her. How can you do such a thing? She asked, hoping against hope that it was true. As I told you, water is power, and I am filled with water. It will not take too much, but I can open a path back. You annoy me, human child, and your kind does not deserve to be here. I will gladly send you home. I can always replace the water I use. Alicia thought about this, the flame in her chest growing brighter. She could go home, back to her family. She could see her mom and dad again. She could have her whole life back. what would she be leaving behind? Would she be abandoning her friends in a time of need? Dooming this world to death? After all, if Gran'Tree used his water to create a path to send her home, he would just draw more water from the land. Would that accelerate the drying? Alicia looked back at her friends, Mickey, Briar, and Fiona. They trusted her and got her here, even fighting off predators with no sign of selfishness. She looked past them to the clearing beyond, to the huge pile of stones that was once the great mountain troll Bristleback, the last of his kind. What was his sacrifice for, if not to help save this world? She looked beyond even that and saw the dying lands as far as she could see. She thought of her own forest back home, so vibrant, green, and filled with life. She couldn't let the drying continue here. She couldn't abandon this world, not ever after everything she and her friends had gone through. She knew what she had to do. Chapter 15, Rain Song. A hush fell over the clearing and surrounding woods, as if every living thing, plant and animal alike, held its breath, waiting to hear Alicia's response. She rose to her feet, brushing off the dirt from her bottom, and stepped once again toward the gray trunk of the tree. But instead of speaking, Alicia began to sing, her voice tentative and small. She sang the melody, sweet and true. Caring for the ones we love, family and friends, will never be a wasted cause and needs to end. The words from the song she used to sing with her father came back to her. The beauty of the world we see can only grow so bright. The tree watched her carefully, curiously listening to the music that floated up from this small human child far below it on the forest floor. Without the love we get and give to hold us through the night. As she reached the second verse, the words began flowing with more confidence. Alicia's voice grew stronger, finding the rhythm of the verse and gaining a deeper understanding of the meaning. It was a song of love, but more than that, it was a song of compassion and of care. In the words was a truth she had always known, but only really understood here, during her time in this realm, with this strange bunch of friends she called family. The untapped magic within her gave the words power. She sang of promises and faith, of kindness and support. It was a song she'd heard since infancy, and she knew it so well. Her voice carried up through the branches of the tall, tall tree. A crack of lightning flashed across the sky, followed closely by a great boom of thunder rolling through that valley. In that moment, she felt the smallest drop land in her hair. Her trio of friends startled and looked quickly around for shelter. Finding none, Mickey and Briar crouched beneath Fiona's legs. Fear lowered her body a bit, protective of the smaller creatures. Alicia showed no concern for the flash, lost in the power of the music. She lifted her face skyward and sang with all her might. Take a moment, look around, and see who needs a hand. On this shore where we exist, we're all just grains of sand. The giant yellow pine, so majestic and so big compared to all the other puny trees in the forest, could not hold back. The sheer beauty of this young child's voice was beyond anything he had ever heard. The bird song in the trees could not compete. The rush of the winds through the branches could not compete. How could one so young have words to describe such wonder? Understanding slowly dawned on Gran'Tree, and with it came tears. The one thing he had all around him, but didn't see. family. His family was the lodge pines and the grand fir trees, the stellar jays and the hummingbirds, the squirrels in the trees and the chipmunks on the ground, the deer, the bears, and the owls. He had always felt so alone, and so chose to rule instead of love. But the old tree was surrounded by family this entire time, and all he needed was this sweet, sweet child to show him how selfish he had been, how blind. He cried for the sorrow he felt about what he had done, for the sadness of the friends lost, and for the beauty and promise of hope that Alicia sang about. He looked down upon the boulders that used to be Bristleback, the final resting spot of the last remaining mountain troll that would forever be a reminder of what he had done. The giant pine wailed harder, knowing his actions had caused such grief. The tears flew wildly now, his massive branches shaking and stirring up the wind, his tremendous sobs booming out like thunder. Gran'Tree's tears came down in a great storm over the forest, soaking the land as far as the eye could see. His great power was draining away and back into the world around him. Small bushes and plants bent under the torrent of rain and wind, eagerly soaking up the life-giving water. Lakes and ponds began to fill, and the frogs and salamanders, which had burrowed underneath the earth so long ago, started to emerge. With eyes turned to the sky, their hardened skin softened once again in the rain. Birds rubbed against the wet leaves, gathering water against their feathers, and fluffing them out like they had not done in years, flinging away years of heavy dust that had begun to take a toll on their ability to fly. In the middle of it all stood Alicia. At the base of the giant tree, she herself lost in tears, thinking about her own sacrifice and the family she would never see again. Her dad, who would play guitar and tell stupid jokes, thinking he was the most hilarious person in the world. The person who would chop wood to build grand fires in the cabin fireplace and roast marshmallows perfectly, just the way she liked them. And her mom, who would always be there when she wasn't feeling well, always making her chicken noodle soup when Alicia needed it. The person who read to her at night and always had a mug of hot chocolate waiting when she came in from the cold. And she cried for Bristleback, who gave the last of his life to get her to this spot, here and now, just moments too late to save himself. Her upturned face and hair were soaked, days of dirt and grime sluiced away under the torrent of rain, but still she continued with the song. Despite the storm raging around her, her voice was strong and true, reaching the final crescendo and holding the last note like she and her father always did. As the final words left her mouth and the tones faded, Alicia felt drained. Standing there with rain pouring down on her, she knew that she had succeeded in her quest to save the land. Gran'Tree was actually shrinking in size as great stores of water left him and flooded the landscape. She was happy for Mickey, Fiona, Briar, and all the life that would continue to thrive here on the wild side. But her happiness was dimmed with the understanding that by saving this land, she would never return to the life she knew. Alicia thought of her friends, her school, and how much she missed her mom and dad. She longed to be with them, even if just to relieve their suffering at not knowing what had happened to their little girl. Now they would grow old, never learning of the adventures she had here, never knowing all that she had learned about this forest and the creatures that inhabited it. They would never get to hold their daughter again, comfortable and warm on their lap, in front of the fire, with the scent of wood smoke filling the air. They would never see her grow up, graduate college, and become the young woman they knew she would become. Alicia turned from the great tree, her eyes still filled with tears, and saw her father kneeling in the distant bushes. His head hung low, as if all the weight of the world lay on his shoulders. Dad? Dad? Dad! Chapter 16. A Beautiful Reunion. Kneeling in the storm, Richard heard a faint voice and looked up to see movement beyond the bushes. What was that? Couldn't be. He had looked and looked to no avail. Alicia? He jumped to his feet. Alicia ran to him through the bushes, ignoring the small scratches they made on her legs, throwing herself into his arms. Sobbing, they held each other fiercely. Alicia could barely breathe. Richard pulled away and looked at her questioningly. Where were you? I looked and called over and over. I was terrified I'd lost you. Dad, how? She cried, holding his hand tight with both of hers. I was on the wild side. She dropped his hand and gestured toward the magnitude of the massive pine. And Gran'Tree had sucked up all the water. He forced me to make a choice. So I chose to save the land instead of coming home. I'm sorry. I knew it would be hard on you and Mom, but it was the right thing to do. She turned to show him where she had left the giant tree and the mysterious land behind. She froze. It was gone. The clearing, the boulders of bristleback, a final reminder of his existence. The massive yellow pine that dominated the landscape. Her friends, all gone. Alicia, what are you talking about? Wildside? Gran'Tree? Dad was all right there. I've been on the craziest adventures with Mickey guiding me. I spent the night in an underground burrow, and I battled foxes, and one time I even slept in the hand of a mountain troll. I walked forever, and everything was dying. I had to sing, and I thought I'd never see you or Mom again. Adventure? Mickey? He took his daughter's shoulders gently, turning her to face him. What is this nonsense? You've only been gone a few minutes, her father said incredulously as he let her go. What? No, I haven't. Fine, fine. Let's talk about it later. I'm just glad you're safe, honey. Please don't ever go wandering off without saying anything again. Now let's find someplace dry and wait out the rest of this storm. The storm passed quickly, as many summer storms do. Their clothes and towels were soaking wet, so there was nothing to do but dry out under the sun, which had broken through the remnants of the clouds left behind by the departing storm. The wind had died down as well, making the road back home easier than anticipated. During the return trip across the lake, Alicia told her father everything about stepping into the other world, meeting Mickey, and learning about Gran'Tree. She told of the lake disappearing, of not being able to find him, and of being cold and scared. Stories of fighting foxes, briar, and poor old bristleback flowed from her. Through it all, Richard listened, seeing his daughter's bright, sparkling eyes, unable to avoid her enthusiasm, and doing his best to steady the boat as she gestured wildly during the recounting of the story, especially in her recounting of the battle against the foxes. She looked like an amateur fencer, lunging forward as if her walking stick, discarded now, had been a sword. The stories reminded her father of his own adventures as a child. He told her he would imagine that a giant log was really a crocodile, or that the moss in the trees was a sign of witches that flew through the night, flew through the forest at night, getting their hair caught in the branches. I will allow you this adventure, Alicia, he said, gesturing with the handle of the oar in her direction. Your stories make me long for imagination I had back when I was a child. But next time, don't lose track of time so easily. I bet Mom is going to be really worried about us, Dad. Alicia suddenly remembered how concerned her mother had been about them rowing across the lake in the first place. She would be able to see them coming back across the lake. Alicia and Richard looked forward to the warm mugs of hot chocolate they knew would be waiting for them when they arrived. I can't wait to get home and tell her all about Mickey, Fiona, Briar, and Bristleback. I may not tell her about Gran'Tree. He might be way too scary for her. Do you think she'll have hot chocolate ready for us? I love you, Lish, he said, not answering the question, just looking at his daughter with an overwhelming fondness. I love you too, Dad. You want to sing a song? Sure. I've got the perfect one. It's about family. You know the one. She smiled. He winked. And so they did. Epilogue. Alicia stood on the small beach on the other side of the lake, looking wistfully into the woods beyond. Somewhere out there, she imagined a deer, a squirrel, and a noisy jaybird, all watching out for each other. And she remembered a giant friend who made the ultimate sacrifice to save her and the lands he called home. She missed them all. Suddenly she squealed in surprise as cold water splashed against her back. She turned and saw her mother, Katie, cupping her hands in the water, ready for a second throw. Oh, no, you don't, she warned, and spun toward her mother, her hands raised like menacing, exaggerated claws, just like one of her favorite monster movie villains, the creature from the Black Lagoon. Alicia continued, in character, stomping big stomps into the lake, water splashing high from each step. Katie grabbed Alicia under the arms and spun her around. You're almost getting too big for me to do that anymore, she exclaimed, burrowing her face into the young girl's neck and making loud chomping noises against her skin. Stop! 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 Alicia laughed, screaming with delight. She squirmed away from her mother's grasp and threw herself into the water, swimming toward Richard. Well, you're not too big yet for me to throw you from my shoulders, he said, laughing in response to the antics of Alicia and Kate.
Okay, well, I guess as we're having trouble connecting with Michael, we'll read the last couple pages, and if we can get him back, we can get him back. Okay, back to Richard. But you're not too big yet for me to throw you from my shoulders, he said, laughing in response to the antics of Alicia and Kate. He ducked down into the water, and Alicia clambered up onto his back, pulling herself higher until she planted her feet firmly on his shoulders. Her dad reached up, grasped each of her ankles, and then flexed his legs upward, jumping into the air while releasing his grip, which propelled Alicia through the air. She landed with a great splash nearby and came up, choking from a combination of lake water and laughter. Katie swam up to the two of them and looked at Alicia smiling and said, I love you, you know. I know, Mom, she replied. These were the moments Alicia cherished with her parents. Now that she was getting older, they didn't happen all that often. It made her happy that they seemed to have as much fun doing these silly things as she did. Hey, what about me? Richard asked, feigning disappointment. What am I, chopped liver? I love you too, honey, her mother replied. Me too, Alicia exclaimed. Now let's swim. Dad, will you throw me from your shoulders again? Sure, her father said with a smile. Alicia turned back once more towards the woods. Did she see a flash of something? Something just at the periphery of her vision? She squinted and shaded her eyes from the sun with her two hands and looked closely at a golden-mantled squirrel that stood up on its hind legs atop a log, gazing at her intently. As she watched the squirrel, deciding this person didn't have any treats for it, dropped to all fours and scampered away into the bushes and out of sight. Alicia turned back towards her parents, waiting patiently for their watery shenanigans to end, and felt a surge of gratitude for what she had. Life was good. Mickey gazed out from the forest edge and watched the young girl at play with her family. He was sorry that he could not talk to her, but just seeing her made him happy. Guess she made it back home after all, Briar screeched. What a wonderful surprise, or what a wonderful family. She looks so happy. Yes, she does, Briar. She certainly does, Mickey replied with a bit of sadness in his voice. Oh, come on. She never meant to be in our world, said Briar. You're right, I know, Mickey continued to look at the human. Starving. Fine, shut your beak, you noisy bird. Do you want to attract foxes? Mickey scolded the jay. I'm not worried about foxes, Briar exclaimed as they turned back towards the dark woods, and Fiona grazing just a few feet away. I'll beat them off, just caw like last time, he bragged as he flew around the branches above. Besides, we have Fiona, and she doesn't caw or talk much, but she sure can kick. Mickey climbed up onto Fiona's shoulder, and together this oddball family moved off into the forest. With a backwards look and his eyes streaming with tears, he watched Alicia play until they were out of sight. That's the sweet final picture. What a lovely story. It's so sweet. One of the things we love about it is the found family, or the soul family, where they all along the way. So, well, I guess we're having a little bit of trouble getting Michael back on, but it was a very, very sweet end to the story. We love the family that they find along the way and create for themselves. So while we're trying to see if we can get Michael back, wanted to talk a little bit about Bookshop. If you haven't heard of it before, bookshop.org is a place you can go to purchase all sorts of indie books and traditional books, and part of their mission is helping local bookstores. So for every purchase, they donate money to local indie bookstores, and I believe they've donated over $1 million to local bookstores. So we do have a shop on Bookshop with all of our books available, or you can, I believe, order through your local bookstore on Bookshop to support them. For the Passage at Moose speech, if you were to purchase a book there, they would send $1.70, or they would give that to local bookstores. So that's a wonderful way to support the book industry. Also, if you haven't heard of it before, IndieBound is another great way to find local indie bookstores and shop through them. Or of course you can go to michaelscabinbooks.com or Calling Card Books to get that free book, ebook, or to purchase copies of any of the books in paperback, hardcover, get the series all together. So it's a wonderful way to get some more books into your life. All right, well, we wait to see if we can get Michael on, because it would be wonderful to be able to chat with him a little bit and kind of close out the day with him. We do hope that you will join us next Wednesday at noon Pacific time. We will probably be starting on the next book, which is Finding the Lost, but that has yet to be fully determined. So if you have any suggestions for what we should read, definitely leave us a comment. And join us Friday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, where we'll be reading one of these fiction and nonfiction books. And if you have any suggestions there, definitely leave a comment below. Well, we hope you've enjoyed reading Moose Beach with us. We certainly enjoyed reading to all of you.